This is primarily an information session intended to raise information security awareness and provide examples of ways that may mitigate your risk of having information stolen, as well as minimize the impact when it happens. Everyone must assess individually whether a product or approach applies to their own situation and what actions, if any, to take. I'm a software developer by experience and by trade. I was coding a custom application for a small business before I was old enough to drive. I have a bachelor's in computer science from the University of Cincinnati. My postgraduate experience ranges from coding mainframe billing systems, supporting Tier 1 telecommunications clients, working with web applications as a front end for those same clients, to small business insurance administration. What I lack is a bunch of letters of the alphabet after my name, such as CISM, CISSP, CIA, and CEH, all information security certifications. I am here to open your eyes to some of the threat landscape you face as an individual and to help give you some ideas on ways to combat it. Corporate security training tends to focus on a few points in order to allow a checkbox to be marked that employees have been given training. Some requirements, such as monthly password expiration, use of capital letters, and setting minimum length, can make a password easier to crack. Further consider that many hackers are state-sponsored, China, North Korea, and members of terrorist organizations, organized crime, or gangs who use monetary gains from hackers as funds for operations and springboards for further attacks. We as individuals need to understand the problem and how to protect ourselves. I've spent weeks of time researching and developing these materials. If I attempted to give you this entire presentation in one sitting, it would take hours, and I probably wouldn't even scratch the surface at that. Perhaps this works as a training class, but not as a lunchtime webinar. I've created an abbreviated subset of these 4 topics and hope to give you a quick overview of awareness, touch on assessment, spell out a couple of actions you may choose, and round it out with some attention. This is not a one-and-done discussion. Both myself and Benchmark team are eager to hear your thoughts, and just as importantly, your input on further topics you feel would be useful. So the analogy of peeling back an onion is frequently used to describe looking at something that has many layers which need to be peeled in order to see what is underneath, or something which has many levels to review. This analogy fits very well when discussing information technology and information security, not only because of all the layers literally, but also because as you peel it back and learn, it might actually make you cry. We start by peeling into awareness. What is the web? You've probably heard the term dark web and likely associate the term with illegal activity. But what really is the web? We can think of the web as being divided into 3 parts: the clear web, the deep web, and the dark web. The clear web is everything that you can see by simply searching and clicking on results. The data is tracked and made available in search engines, indexed by web crawlers, etc. The deep web consists of information which requires a password or other credentials to access. Think of your banking information, your email, a service you subscribe to or order from, medical records, which all require authentication in order to gain access. The deep web is accessible using a standard browser such as Chrome or Firefox. I've seen some estimates suggesting the deep web layer makes up 95 to 99% of the data on the internet. The dark web was created to give spies a way to anonymously communicate over the internet. To gain access, it requires a special browser called a Tor browser, which is based on Firefox. Some people do host sites on the dark web to engage in illegal activity. What is personal information? Legal definitions include the concepts of personally identifiable information, PII, as well as sensitive personal information, SPI. These definitions tend to be more concerned with information which alone or with minimal other information can identify a specific individual. From an information security perspective, PII and SPI are important to protect. However, it is important to realize that anything and everything about you, including hobbies, interests, favorite foods, and colors, could potentially be used by a hacker or identity thief. In 2012, LinkedIn had about 167 million records stolen. 117 million of those were user IDs paired with passwords. The data was found for sale on the dark web for as little as $2,300. Interesting to note, these passwords were secured using unsalted SHA-1 encryption. This approach was considered insecure as far back as 2005, and as of 2010 was recommended to be replaced if used. If you weren't a LinkedIn user in 2012, what about Yahoo in 2013? Information from 1.5 billion, that's a B, accounts were hacked in 2 separate instances in 2013 and 14. Some of this information included encrypted passwords. Passwords were encrypted using an MD5 technology. As early as 1996, it was recommended that that MD5 technology not be used to protect passwords. This is a busy slide. Certainly violates the terms of a good presentation as it has a lot of detail catching your attention and focus. I think it's an important step in this journey of awareness as it is a fairly large domain of common businesses and other entities which engage with a large number of people. Have you done businesses with any of these companies? What do they all have in common? Well, they all reported data breaches in 2014 and represented over 200 million instances of data records breached. Note, this is not a list of all companies with data breaches, just a sample. In 2016, a breach of 360 million MySpace records containing user ID, password, and email address was reported as having happened in and prior to June of 2013. While MySpace isn't widely used at this point, the personal information available on the accounts could be useful to a hacker. Also consider whether the same user ID, email, password combinations from the MySpace account might have been used with other sites. These sites could be very relevant today. At this point, I haven't even mentioned the Equifax breach in 2017. Could have saved a little bit of time by just citing that one hack that snared information from 147 million people, nearly half of the population of the U.S. in one swoop. Reviewing some of these other instances should help you appreciate that your information is everywhere and any of it can be compromised at any point in time. So where do we go from here? We'll understand a little bit about how breaches are harmful. Clearly, an unsecure password being compromised is a problem. What about system breaches with encrypted passwords? Earlier, I mentioned that information security practices can make us less safe. For example, corporate practices like requiring password changes on a periodic basis, use of a capital letter, and minimum character count are all meant to keep passwords safe. I've even noticed some businesses I work with as a consumer periodically make me change a password. While well-intentioned, these practices actually set the stage for making it easier to crack. How? Well, basic human nature. Given a simple password format, such that it be 10 characters, contain a capital letter and a number, people tend to pick a password that is exactly 10 characters, not just minimum, begins with a capital letter and ends with a number. So someone trying to crack that password can assume a length of 10, 26 options for the first digit, capital letters, followed by 8 to 9 lowercase letters, and then a couple of numbers. In addition, the passwords tend to be actual words. There are commercial as well as open source, free, tools available for password cracking. These cracking tools offer a variety of attack options, including dictionary attack, where known words are used and then morphed per the aforementioned data. The hacker doesn't need to crack 100% of the passwords in a list, just a few. In some cases, as many as 80% of the passwords are cracked in a short amount of time using this simple approach. So for assessment, I want you to take a look at what you can see versus what others see on the internet. Call that visibility. Open a different browser. Look at yourself on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, any social media site upon which you've built a presence. It's important to look at your information as a friend may see it, if you can, a friend of a friend, and definitely as an unauthenticated user. Can people see things about you that may help with a hack of your security questions or potentially even your passwords? And for action, let's dig into some specific things you might be able to do. So password hacking and cracking is something that continues to evolve. A practice that may have been smart 5 years ago has morphed into something that a hacker easily attacks. If you have to use real words, become aware of the trends, whether it pertains to character substitution or common passwords. Absolutely do not reuse passwords across sites. Generate longer passwords of random characters unique to each site to create a password that is hard to crack, as well as eliminate the chance that a data compromise from one site will allow access to other sites. Consider use of two-factor authentication. Realize it is not an end-all solution, as some forms of two-factor have been hacked or more appropriately compromised as a result of social engineering. As schemes continue to evolve, two-factor authentications mature, consider moving on to other approaches as they become available, yet to be named. An example of thinking ahead of hackers, choosing strong passwords is a concern, but consider what you use for security questions and answers. These questions typically are used to initiate a password reset, but are also used as a second password of sorts in that when a system detects that you're signing on for the first time from a machine, like a new IP address, they'll ask you for the answer to your question. If you're like me, you have hundreds of online accounts. Some accounts you may use regularly enough that you could remember a complex password due to reuse. Trying to remember hundreds of complex password security questions would be impossible for most of us. Never mind trying to do it as you age like I am. So what can you do? Well, consider use of a password management tool. I know this violates one of the rules we've been taught in various training. Don't write down your password. I'm not suggesting you put them on a Post-it note around your desk. However, I am suggesting that keeping them so simple that they're easily remembered also makes them easily hacked. That's almost as bad as writing it down. How do you select a tool? Well, one of the bigger aspects to consider is whether you want a file-based solution or cloud-based. After that, select a tool from a reputable company and a software, obtain it from a reputable source such as the company website. Find one with good reviews and strong encryption techniques such as AES-256. There are pros and cons to file-based as well as cloud-based. File-based gives you some more opportunity to lock down the file and keep it away from other people's eyes and hack potential. Whereas a cloud-based solution, you've got your information in the cloud, it's off-site, you're kind of more prone to avoid disaster recovery situations like a serious issue with your home or equipment failures. They both have pluses and minuses. You just kind of have to assess and pick which one's best for you. So eWallet is a file-based password management tool offered by Ilium Software, which is currently based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It is available for a variety of platforms, including Windows, Android, macOS, iOS. There's a one-time fee per license or device because you do need to buy it per operating system. It does use 256-bit AES encryption to encrypt the entire content of the wallet and is FIPS, Federal Information Processing Standard compliant. eWallet does offer a cloud synchronization option using services such as Dropbox. Some sort of synchronization is required if you want to share the wallet between your phone and desktop computer or with another person such as your spouse. While eWallet is a file-based solution, this synchronization configuration will provide some of the same off-site data protection as an online management tool will, though it will introduce the same risks of being hacked, as well as a unique risk of conflict files being generated when the tool can't figure out which file is current. If you do share the file with others or across multiple devices of your own, try to agree on a single spot to consider the master from which you initiate updates. eWallet also offers a variety of organizational options and categories. They can be nested under each other, almost like you put cards in a file cabinet. You have flexibility to change field names and add field names as you need. And I found it useful for tracking serial numbers and software license codes and things like that. So from the list on the left, single-click a line item to view the card information. Note that the password is hidden in this view, but the other information is not. You can control the types of fields, and these other fields would be hidden here depending on the field type. Also note that when you mouse over the fields, you have the option to copy the field into your clipboard for easy paste into a website or application. Let's look at one of the cards in a little more detail. Using the MyBank online banking card, you can see options for system name, user ID, password, website URL, etc. In addition to the copy-paste options on the field shown on the previous slide, with AutoPass feature on, you can launch right into your web browser and in most cases have the user ID password information populated for you automatically. We'll talk about password generation on the next slide. Before we get there, I'd like to point out the Q1, Q2, Q3 fields in the detail section. These represent security questions and answers that you are asked to set up on many sites. If you are using a password management tool, then it is very easy to use gibberish answers that are not as easy to be cracked via dictionary attack or other attacks, and it's even easier to use different answers on different sites, just like you were encouraged to do with your passwords. It takes a little bit of extra effort to do this, but imagine the dividend it could pay if you are the target of an attack. So with all that in mind, let's explore the generate password function of eWallet. At a basic level, you can set the password length, as well as choose the domain of characters, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, special characters, aka punctuation. I like that the punctuation characters used for the password is user configurable, as I have run into sites which require special characters, but with certain restrictions. The fact that the special characters are configurable also means that if a hacker knows you use eWallet, he or she doesn't necessarily know the domain of special characters, nor the password lengths you're working with. So it just adds that much more randomness to the situation. As I tend to do copy-paste for my passwords or use the AutoPass function, I have not used the memory aid option. If you do want to try to memorize passwords or otherwise have a desire to do more than just copy and paste, the memory aid section will offer a sentence based on the password or another way to pronounce the password to help you remember it. The dictionary option will base the password from the dictionary and prepend and append odd characters. This seems like it would generate something that would be easier to form a dictionary attack against, hence, it's from a dictionary. If you do want to use this option, I'd recommend also checking the worked box, which will further alter the word a bit, but leave it somewhat readable. Even at that, hackers are smart enough to create variances of dictionary words with special characters with substitutions, dollar signs for S's, asterisks for A's, and so forth. If you're using a password management tool, it would seem wise just to do a full randomization. We've covered the most meaningful aspects of eWallet at this point. Just a few more slides with some of the submenus. On the left are the options you have when right-clicking on a category from the tree view. On the right are some of the field types you can choose from when editing a card. On the card view slide, you can set up a field that the value is unless you're in edit mode. The hidden field types let you accomplish that. Lastly, these are the card type templates you can choose from. Password is the one I tend to use the most. I found bank account and serial number options nice too, especially if you are incorporating this into your personal or business disaster recovery plan. Having insurance information, serial numbers organized in one spot and electronically available can be very useful. Put a copy of this file along with the eWallet installation software and software key, make sure you guys have the key, on a USB drive and put it in your safe deposit box. Consider updating it once or twice a year like you do the batteries in your smoke alarm. So this has just been a very abbreviated discussion on some of these topics. It really is a circular effort. You have awareness, you assess what matters to you, you take action based on it, you pay attention to those actions, and then you just start over again with more awareness, continuing to monitor changes and what the threat landscape is. So I'm going to pull through a couple of the reference slides I've put together. These are references from the entire presentation, so all of these don't apply to this little subset. However, if you look at some of the links and read up some of these articles, there's actually some interesting stories and interesting things you can learn from. And I realize there are a lot of links. So we can take a pause here and see if there are any questions.